Have you ever wondered what it's like to actually have a podcast show? What does it actually look like on the inside? In this episode, I am celebrating 3 years of running my show, and I'm answering your questions that you've sent in to me on social media and by email. So stay tuned.
You're listening to The Brand Compass, conversations to navigate your way to building a brand fit for purpose and poised for success. Here's your host, Shelley Rostlund.
Hello there, my friends. Welcome back. If you're a returning listener, if you're new to me and the show, I am Shelley, your host on this conversational journey. Now, I'm doing something completely unprecedented in this episode. I've not prepared for this. I thought I'd test my anxiety levels. Basically, this is part 2, so you will have already listened to the first episode of where I had a conversation with Imogen Jones, where I reflect back on my journey as the host of this show. But what we'd also done before that episode was actually pop a question out on social media and also within our business communities to ask if there were any questions that people wanted to ask around, starting a show or, running a show, if they had any kind of questions around podcasting really, and then we tackle them. But we had so many questions, we couldn't do it in that episode as well. So I thought what I'll do is be very brave and do this very quick fire kind of Q&A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the question that I got or that we received on socials, and I'm going to give you my off the top of my head answers to these, which is freaking me out because I'm a planner, dude. Like, people, I don't do this. Everyone that knows me knows I plan within an inch of my life. So here goes. So there were quite a few questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick out the ones that I think will most benefit you guys. And then what Imogen's going to do, my work buddy who works with me in my agency, 𝗙𝗘𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗙, she is the podcast specialist, is she's going to take some of the other questions we got where we thought, oh, those are quite useful. And she's going to do like a series of little videos and do a blog post just to answer those specifically. So I'll add those resources as we do them as well. So let's get going. So first question, how does having a podcast help your business? Okay. Now, my podcast for me, so these are my objectives, bearing in mind you do need to think through why you're going to have a show. Okay, so let's talk about me. So for me, I launched my show as a companion piece to a group program that I'd launched around about the same time. So my podcast show is now 3 years old. We just got over 80 episodes. So this year, hopefully I'll close in on my 100. And for me, my objective was actually to help my thinking, but also to allow other people to hear my thinking and how I converse with people and how my brain functions, if you like. Because I feel like for the work that I do, as I'm a consultant, you're almost like a therapist, right? And your bedside manner is just as important as your knowledge base. So I feel like for me in the show, what I get to do is just showcase how I actually deal with people, what my mannerisms are like, what my personality is like. And hopefully that helps people to get to know me from a distance, maybe feel a bit more confident in working with me. So at the moment, that's the objective of my show. It really helps me with my thinking anyway. Thinking out loud and having these conversations with people, it really helps my brain as well, because strategic thinking is my top strength. So I feel like the show manages to feed into that. So I hope that answers that question. Next question. How do you stop yourself from repeating the same types of episodes or questions? This is quite easy if you actually have a strategy for your podcast show. So yes, you need a concept as to, what it is, the reason why people are going to listen to your show, but it's not just about that. You would think along top level themes, and that's the way Imogen and I work, is much like if you were content planning for a blog, podcasting is long form content. This is for, content for the long term. So you do need to think strategically and go, okay, there's kind of 3 themes around or 4 themes around what we're going to do. And if you stick to that and you mix between the themes and you constantly evolve the topics that get deeper over time, to be fair, you don't end up actually repeating. There's an element of consistency, I think, that is important with podcasting. So in terms of your format and your structure, sometimes that helps you to stay consistent as well in terms of the types of episodes. Now and again, you could surprise your guests with something, but I wouldn't surprise them too much because it actually ends up disjointing their limbic system. So they start to get confused about why they're listening. So I think I would just say, watch out for that. Next question. What was your biggest time sink which you eventually fixed? I'm not really sure about that question because it all takes time anyway. The fallacy of AI making everything easier, it might do over time, but you have to train the AI. There's a lot of the process to my episodes that I enjoy, so it will take me longer to do. So I enjoy writing them. I enjoy coming up with the ideas where somebody else might get ChatGPT to help them with ideas. Whereas my brain likes that, so I do that. So I think anyway, as soon as you're structured and you're repetitive over time anyway, you get quicker at doing certain things. Anyway, in the beginning, everything feels a bit sluggish. It does help if you work with a podcast manager, which is what we do in our agency for clients, because some of that structure is already spoon-fed to you and we train you, to do certain things that actually the whole benefit of that is being more efficient over time. I think if you're less structured and you're a bit airy-fairy around what you're going to do next, I think everything will take longer all the time. So we're very efficiency-based, and my brain can't function at an inefficient level. So I'm always looking for a tighter way to do something, but to do it right, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure if that answers that question. Next question. What's the most unexpected benefit of having a podcast? I think it's this bit about your evolved. I feel like it's an opportunity to, like I said before, think out loud. So like, I know what I feel and think about things internally, but to actually being able to externalize that, and actually developing my group program years ago helped with this as well. But the podcast even more so, because actually every new conversation I'm having is stretching my thinking. It's either supporting the principles I know I have or the values that I have, but it also makes me think wider and deeper about my subject. So actually, I feel like that was my unexpected benefit of having the podcast. Do you measure success beyond downloads? I think you have to, because as an independent podcast show host, you're not Diary of CEO. If you're not huge on YouTube or have a couple of million followers on Instagram, you could get depressed quite quickly if you only went on the numbers. We always look at the numbers anyway, and the numbers are more of a making sure that there's organic growth. Like there's a natural incline. If everything just keeps dropping and nothing's happening and there's crickets, that's feedback. So I think I'm happy as long as there's a good, steady, natural, organic growth in numbers, whether that's in listeners or in downloads. I would love every listener to listen to at least 5 or 6 episodes. I've got 80 out there anyway. I think there's feedback in that you can't always get all those numbers as well, so it's pretty difficult. So I think you do need to measure your success. And in fact, when we work with clients, we've got like in our podcast planner, we keep like a section for, because we do monthly calls with clients, which is what Imogen does for me. She's my podcast manager. She will make notes like when things happen. So someone will say to me, could you come on my show, or could you come talk to me about this thing, because I heard you have this conversation with so-and-so on your episode, blah blah blah. And I love that. So I was like, oh right, okay, then I note that down. So there's sometimes those come through at weird times. It might come a year later from an episode, but I try and mark those down as well, so that they're little bits of walls of evidence. If you've listened to my reflection episode on Helen Seymour, which talked about your wall of evidence, that's what I create for my show as well, just so that I can, see that there are ripple effects that you don't always know about. Question. Do you ever re-listen to your episodes? Why or why not? God, yes, I really do. This is before they even go out. So with solos, and I did this morning for an episode I recorded this morning. What I'll do is I'll write the solo first, and then I will actually read it out on a voice note on my phone, and then I'll go for a walk and I'll listen to it and make sure it makes sense. If it makes sense, then I'm happy, then I'll record. So that's kind of number one. Guest episodes, I run through the planning and then obviously interview. But as soon as the video's been edited, this is before the audio gets done, I listen back on the video while I'm walking to see if I manage that conversation well, if there are is there anything that I need to edit out or smoothen out or doesn't make sense for the listener. And then I get the audio through from my audio editor, and then I listen to that one again because it's polished and he does a fantastic job, to hear if there's anything, again, amiss. So that's number 3. And then when it goes out on the apps, Imogen probably thinks I'm pretty crazy, but I feel like it sounds different on the apps as well. So I almost want to feel like I want to know what it sounds like for you as a listener when you tap on it. So I want to make sure the experience feels safe. So the answer is yes. I re-listen a lot. And sometimes I've enjoyed episodes so much. I know I had a good giggle, like with Darren's, right? And I will go back and I'll listen just so that I can listen to us giggling and getting on. And it makes me feel good because I was like, oh, I was happy that day. Like I had a good time and it was a good conversation and boy, wasn't that great. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes it reinforces why I like doing the show. So yes, I do listen to the episodes. I do encourage my clients to do that as well, because not only am I listening for sense, I'm listening to my breathing. I'm listening to if I'm giving the guest enough space to say and be who they are. Trying to recognize if I'm using filler words, am I adjusting my voice level now? My voice archetype work I've done with 𝗙𝗛𝗓𝗏. So I'm constantly trying to learn and be better at myself as a host, and I feel like you can only do that if you do go back and listen. So I do get my clients to do the same as well. I think it's important we get our analytics. Sorry, there was a question like, what are your numbers like? So that's the reason I'm saying this. I think we use 𝗙𝗣𝗜𝗏 as our hosting platform, and we use that as a benchmark because it's very difficult to get good numbers from all of the platforms and it's too time consuming. So we use the hosting platform as our benchmark. And I think at this point, sorry, I just knocked my microphone. At this point, there is over 3,000 downloads, and I've got, I think, coming up to 1,800 listeners now. And for me, those are lovely numbers. I'm chuffed with that. When I think about when I used to blog years ago and how many views I'd get on a blog, or know that anybody was in there in that dark void, even listening to what I had to say. These listener numbers and those download numbers, I try and visualize them like there are people in a room. So if you put 1,800 people in a room, that's that's impressive, right? That's a small theatre. So to be honest, I try and do that and give myself some perspective and context when it comes to numbers as well. Right, another question. Will you monetize your podcast, i.e. sponsorship? The thing about this is it starts to slightly alter your strategy and your objective for your show. So I think there's an element of monetization anyway, because you should be using your show as a platform to showcase your expertise and your voice. And ultimately, you should be sharing how you actually help people. So I'm trying to be good about that now as well. At the end of the show, I'll always remind people what it is that I do and that they can work with me. And I think that's a form of monetization. The thing with trying to make money from the actual show, things like sponsorships and that, you've got to start generating some numbers that people will pay to put ads on your show. That's advertising. And then sponsorship, that's people actually supporting you in your message, which you, in theory, you can do because you'll have business partnerships and you could have those discussions and negotiations. It's not on my table at the moment. Mainly, I think I want to get to my 100th episode, and then I want to look to the future and go, okay, I've done my 100 episodes. What have I enjoyed? What do I want to do going forward? Do I want sponsorship? Do I want people to support me along the way and help with the cost and of running a show? So maybe I'll think about that at 100 episodes. I'll come back and answer that question. It does change your strategy though, around visibility, like with YouTube and Instagram and all of that. The promo around the show, it really starts to amp that up. So at the moment, I don't have the time for that. So that would be my honest answer. Next question. What does every host really want from their guest, but is too afraid to ask? I think for me, what I want my guests to be is really proud that they've come on the show and had a really good conversation. I spend a lot of time trying to choose the people quite deliberately that I want to talk to that will be interesting for you as a listener. But also, I don't want people on the show that are doing the rounds. So, you know, the ones who they're launching something, whether it's a book, a program, some kind of online something or other, and they are just on every single podcast, like your newsfeed is filled with it. And the problem with that is fatigue, right? So people are not going to listen to you as a guest if you've been on 20 shows talking about the same thing. It's not interesting because it's the same thing. People are time poor, right? So, you know, I'm using myself as an example. I'll be very selective then as to, okay, so someone that I do follow has launched something. I'll actually pick the show that I most like in order to hear that guest on. I won't just go and listen to them on any show, all right? And also I'll only do it once. So for me, I want my guests to be proud they came on the show. We spend a lot of time as show hosts, like for me, I spend a lot of time putting collateral together for guests so they can be proud, and actually they spend time doing that conversation with me and a prep conversation with me. So I provide them with collateral to go away and share that with their own audiences because I want it to be relevant for them and their audiences. I want to also teach them, like as an aside benefit, of how to keep talking more about what it is that they do. So I'm always kind of practicing what I preach in what it is that I do with clients. But you'd be surprised how many people just don't use that collateral, and it does hurt me a bit, but I know everybody's busy. However, I have tried to position their conversations that make them look the best as well, and not just me. So, and I spend a lot of time in those shorts. So for me, I would just hope that they would use that content to share with their audiences, or at least talk more about them coming on the show. And also, they don't know what opportunities will arise for them if they were seen to be on a show or be on my show where somebody else has been on and think, oh, they've been on that show where those other interesting people and they must be interesting. You know what I mean? There's this kind of ripple effect. Then last question, what's the biggest opportunity that's opened up for you as a result of having your podcast? I don't know. I mean, I love it when I end up with work. I think that's a great opportunity. Sometimes it's a guest, which is even better, because they're usually quite interesting people because I've chosen them. So they're great to work with. It's a great opportunity. I don't know. I feel like there's so many little things that happen all the time. It's like internal shifts. I know what you mean in terms of the question is probably big opportunity to be in. I think what I'd like is one day for somebody to say to me, oh, I like what you do with people that come on your show. Would you come and facilitate a panel? I mean, I love going to panel talks. I love being on panels, and I'd love the opportunity to facilitate panels because I'd have to investigate each of the speakers, like my whole learning and strategic brain would kick in. So I don't know, and I love audio. Like I'm like obsessed with audio. So I feel like what I would like is opportunities. I probably like to play a little bit with, what goes on at radio stations, what goes on actual shows that are broadcast. Doesn't have to be big media, but even, there's so many other networks. So I think none of that kind of stuff has necessarily happened, but I'm not in a rush, I'm also trying to balance perimenopause, having a teenager. There's so many balls in the air of trying to just stay sane every day. So to be honest, my podcast gives me structure. It gives me something to be excited about, and it's something I do enjoy. So I'm actually just happy with that at the moment. If those kind of opportunities come, I'll be super, super chuffed with that. Anyway, right. So there you go. I hope this wasn't a rambler. I hope that was useful for you. Who do you know who could do with listening to this or any of the episodes that I've done before? I've got over 80 now. I've got at least 12 conversations with all these people from completely different fields as well that you can go and listen to as well. So share this episode if you can. Until next time, my friend, stay strong, believe you have value, and make good brand decisions.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Compass. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with your entrepreneurial friends and help them make good brand decisions. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going at ShelleyRostlund.com.